The Flintstones has been brought to you by Winston.
This commercial from 1960 is shocking by today's standards of what's socially acceptable. But back then, this wasn't shocking at all.
They don't show, the wrinkled eyes, and they don't show hands that are,
Right, the yellow teeth.
The yellow teeth and the rest of it.
Cheryl Warsh is a professor of history at Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo with a special interest in the history of alcohol, drugs, and tobacco.
It was not something pleasant to start smoking, right? So you really had to sell the image, and you had to sell it that it's going to make you thin to smoke, and that, and the Vogue magazines and with the women with the cigarettes, right? All of this.
And the tobacco companies did a great job of convincing people that smoking was something desirable. Cheryl finds the irony in the bill of goods that says smoking is liberating, when in fact, addiction is anything but.
And it was a cool thing, and here again, this would be directed to men and boys, right?
100 years ago, drugs that are illegal today were easy to get because no one knew how dangerous they were.
The first time that drugs were really seen as dangerous was after the Civil War. And you had all of these crippled soldiers who had been given opiate during the war, opiate as opium or morphine, and then they would be addicted to it. And also women would be given it in women's helpers, medicines like Lydia Pinkham's vegetable compound, and other cordials, drugs that were supposed to help women with all their little complaints or major complaints. Then they realized that it was dangerous for them, and doctors decided, why don't we try something new? Why don't we try something called the hypodermic needle? And the idea is if you took a needle and you put it in their arm, it would avoid their stomach and maybe they wouldn't get addicted. And so we know the absolute opposite was true.
In this introduction to the 1937 film Reefer Madness, audiences are being educated on how dangerous marijuana is.
The issue is now, as we go more and more towards legalizing marijuana, and this was the same issue we had when we made it easier to drink, is how do you send one message and not another? How do you say that it's okay for adults to smoke marijuana, but it's not okay for kids? And how do you make that time period? When is the time when somebody can smoke marijuana or not? And also, we don't know the full side effects yet of marijuana. And I think that's the good thing about bringing it out in the open, is that for 30, 40 years, people were using it quite extensively, but they would often not tell their doctors how much they were using. And also, there wasn't any really good clinical studies done because it was illegal.
I wonder what the producers of Reefer Madness would think about the growing acceptance of pot in today's modern society. Tilray, a Nanaimo-based licensed producer of medical cannabis, has a wide selection of products available for online purchase, starting at $4 a gram. Cheryl says that marijuana is now where alcohol was at the time of prohibition.
Alcohol is history because so much alcoholism goes through generations. And so you have all of these people that came back from, for instance, the First World War, right? You had all of the soldiers that came back damaged. And they may not have drunk before they went, but they came home, they were using alcohol. What were the legions all about, right? The legion halls were for smoking and drinking and kind of dealing with things. And then, the alcoholism would go through the generations.
Let's take a Winston break. That's it!
While the Flintstones are no longer pushing tobacco and a secondary place for women in our society, Captain Morgan is selling rum. Happy, carefree people are crediting antidepressants for the beautiful lives they live. And movies like The Hangover show you that you can get away with almost anything if you take drugs by accident.
I think we're a generation, a society that thinks that drugs are going to solve all of our problems. There was a study, which I thought was quite remarkable, a few years ago, where they tested the water of the Thames. And they found that there was so much Prozac in the Thames River because so many English people were on prescriptions for antidepressants, and that they actually had it in the water supply.
And so while we might laugh at the naivety of our past, it might do some good to examine how far we've actually come. For Go on Shaw TV, I'm Kate Bergen.